Dr. Jazz.
And for taking the time. Appreciate
Dr.
it.
Jazz.
Oh, it's a wonderful honor to talk with you about music and
Yeah. Well, I
yeah.
mean, I remember the first one I bought was Nomad's Notebook. Like that's a
Oh,
long time ago, obviously because
yeah.
of Ralph, right?
Yeah, uh-huh.
I was blown away by that album. I want to come to that one later, but I want to start this talk. We were emailing,
Hmm.
and you have like a lot of soon to be released, hopefully, music coming out. If you can lead me a little bit through those, I mean, what's happening in the department of band leading, and what are these albums that are gonna come out?
Well, the latest recording I finished in I think it was beginning of June or end of May. A Scottish organ player and piano player named Pete Johnstone and a Scottish drummer named Stephen Henderson. I met those guys. We did a tour in 2018 with a band they had called Square One
Mm.
and had a really nice time. We did a record together, cooperative kind of project. And then Peter wrote to me, I guess about a year ago and said, "Hey, let's do a project, organ, saxophone, and drums." And I said, "Yeah, fantastic, wonderful." And he's an amazing player,
Hmm.
and Stephen
I've heard,
also.
yeah.
So we recorded, I guess I can't remember now, 9 or 10 tunes. None of us have actually taken the time yet to listen to all the tracks and make the choices, but that's the latest thing that I want to release. And a finished, mixed and mastered recording that I actually did in 2012 is the recording that I'm going to be touring with in the beginning of 2025.
Mm.
Um, just as a sort of brief background, I was married to a wonderful saxophone player and singer named Sheila Cooper. And shortly after we moved to Vienna in 2006, she got cancer. And so my focus for a long time was being a caretaker.
Mm.
And she passed away in 2021. And of course, life changed a lot for me. And so I had this recording that I did in 2012, and I never really had the money or the time or the attention to deal with it. And so now that's finished. And then there's another recording from 2006 that I did with an octet.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I listened to that track that you sent me. That's
Oh,
really
thank you
beautiful.
very much. Yeah. I had gotten a grant from what was it? The some arts organization in New York City to compose music. And so I wrote a suite of 5 pieces for my octet called the Muir Woods
Hmm.
Suite. Muir Woods is a park of giant sequoia trees in Northern California, named after the pioneering conservationist John Muir.
Hmm.
And I made a deal with those guys. There was only enough money to do 3 gigs, rehearse, and do an archival recording. And so I promised them I would pay them all more money when I wanted to release it. And so I finally had some money, and so I paid them. Let's see, almost 20 years after the fact. They were all very happy about that.
Sure, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to master that, and I think it's about 42 or 43
Beautiful.
minutes long. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I guess
Perfect.
now what I don't really understand about the record business is people releasing singles now, and it's streaming, and should I even print a CD or I
Yeah.
don't, or an
Yeah.
LP or something. So I have a lot of other octet music that I want to record, and I've been yeah, I mean, I'm sort of getting back into the idea of composing regularly and creating recording ideas, and so those are the 3 things
Beautiful.
coming up. So the organ trio, the quartet recording, which is the same band that's on my record, the European Quartet Live, and also
Yep.
Between Worlds. And then this octet. So those are the new things.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's hard how to release things nowadays. It's
I have to ask my
I have,
students, I guess.
yeah. I don't know. I have the same issue always. I have like 10 mastered albums ready, and I'm like, shit. Should I print them? Should I offer them to a label? The labels don't offer anything anymore.
Yeah, or
Just
you
digital
pay them.
release.
You pay them.
Yeah. Man, that's yeah. I will not name labels even anymore.
Yeah.
I'll
Hey,
stop
when
that.
I saw you in Porgy a little while ago with Bob Moses,
Yeah,
and who was the
Ar
bass player?
Ariel Anderson.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
right. You guys do a recording?
yeah. We did. It came out then. When did it come out? 2 years ago. That's a nice one. I'll send you.
Oh, I'd love
It's a
to hear.
really nice one. And then we did another tour with Ariel and Patrice Herral from Paris, the drummer.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we recorded this also this May. So it's yeah. I mean, Ariel is a monster. He played like in. You hear the stories of like, yeah, man. In 1969, I played with Sonny Rollins with Jon Christensen. I'm like, shit, man. It's like,
He's a little older than we are, but
yeah, but
I think I'm a
just
little older than you. I don't know, but
oh man, but just the experience of
yeah,
being on the stage with these guys, and it's just like
yeah.
mind blowing.
I played
Yeah.
once with Bob Moses in 1988. I did
Well,
2 gigs in Boston.
really?
Yeah, the Austrian bass player Peter Herbert was
Oh yeah,
living in
sure.
Boston. I was in New York City and I had this gig in Boston, and my bass player didn't want to drive to Boston for the door. And so, okay, cool. Peter did it. And oh no, that was that was another time. I played with Larry Grenadier. The only time I played with
Mm.
Larry and Bob Moses.
Oh man, that was the trio?
I think there was a piano player named Andy Ezrin.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I haven't even seen Larry since then, nor have I seen Bob. But that was, yes. Oh
Wow.
yeah.
That's a killing band. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It
man,
was fun for sure. Yeah.
the- if if we go a little bit back, like what got you excited for playing the music that you play? I mean, jazz. Did you have like a specific aha moment where you said like, shit, that's what I want to do, or?
That's a really interesting question because I have to say the answer is not really. When I
Hmm.
was a kid, I wanted to play rock guitar. And I remember having a dream where I was playing the guitar solo on Stairway to Heaven. And so, I was playing rock guitar, but I chose the alto saxophone when I was 9 years old
Hmm.
in school. For some reason, it was either alto sax or cello, and I just chose the alto, not for any particular reason at all. My parents were both very musical. My mom was sang in the choir, as did my father, and played classical piano. And my father
Hmm.
fooled around with jazz. I actually found a little transcription he had done of a piano solo by that blind English piano player who wrote Conception. What's his name? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Um,
George Shearing. No.
yes, George
Yeah,
Shearing.
exactly. Yeah.
And so I was thinking, I'm going to play rock guitar, and then I guess I could say this. I was once so stoned I couldn't tune my guitar. As a 13-year-old,
Sure.
I didn't. So the sax,
It's the 70s. So.
but the sax was a lot easier to tune. So I was just playing the saxophone, and it was fun, and I was able to do a lot pretty fast. And so then I pursued music. But the answer to the question is there was no moment where I thought, I want to do this.
Hmm.
As I look back, it was I was just always driven. And I don't really know how or where that came from. My older brother, his name is Rob Middleton. He's also a professional jazz saxophone player and composer. Yeah, he lives in New York City, or he lives in New Jersey. And my younger brother, named Tom Middleton, is an amazing artist. He's a painter and a gilder and a restorer of
Hmm.
old furniture, and he lives in Paris. So all three of us chose to be artists for some reason. And, at one point, my mom said, do you think you should study something else just in case the music doesn't work out? And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And she said, okay. And my parents were totally supportive, and it their support was justified because both my older brother and I have managed to have careers as professors and professional musicians, and my younger brother's in an incredibly challenging career in Paris. You know, it's like self-employed guys who are working basically for museums and wealthy people and doing amazing work. And yeah, so we three are the artists of our family, and there was never a moment where I said, I want to do this, or I want to be this kind of player. And sometimes when I talk to my students about the things they need to learn, I use the image of and imagining what kind of player they want to be, or even, let's say, who's one of your favorites right now? What do they need to know to be able to do that? And then I think to myself, wow, I never did that. No, I just pursued whatever it was with amazing dedication. And then, you know, years and years and decades later, I look back and go, wow, I never even thought about what I was doing. And one other little thing about that is when I got finished with the University of Miami, I moved to New York City in 1987, and I had learned to play all kinds of different music there. And so I was talking to Dave Liebman, who at that time was really a mentor and I guess we had a sort of master apprentice relationship. And I said, I'm not really sure whether I want to pursue jazz as an artist or maybe more commercial music. And he looked at me and shook his head and said, man, you decided that a long time ago.
Liebman, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he goes straight to the point and, you know, no bullshit, just, and he was right. I had decided it a long time ago. I can play commercial music and I actually like to play rock and pop, but you know, I would always just show up at the gig and play and never be prepared or learn the repertoire or anything like that. And, you know, so yeah, I mean, he was totally right. I am who I am, and I've kind of always been that. And I like it.
Oh, of course.
Did you ever watch that cartoon called Popeye the Sailor Man?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I love that phrase. He goes, I am what I am. So yeah.
That should be the name of the next album or something.
Well, I think I have some better ideas, but
yeah. But, Andy, I read how important was Banff for you. I know Liebman was there as a part of the faculty in mid-'80s, and there was like this monster faculty when you visited. Like, how did you end up there, and what did that represent for you?
That's also a really great question. That was an amazing experience. I was 1985 and 1986. I spent a month each year in Banff, and it was absolutely transformative experience for me. There was a piece of paper hanging on the wall at the University of Miami about this thing. I don't know who put it there. I just remember I applied and got accepted, and I ended up meeting Alan Jones, who's been actually one of my closest personal friends since that time, and also one of my, well, he's my favorite drummer and my favorite musical partner. So I met him in '85, and I met a lot of European musicians, and of course met Dave Holland. I met Richie Byrack, Liebman. That's where I met Kenny Wheeler. I met John Abercrombie, Steve Coleman. Yeah, Smitty Smith was there, and
it was basically the Dave Holland quintet almost, right?
Well, it was the Dave Holland quintet, yeah.
It was,
And the first year there, I was invited to play with the faculty band. It was just me and one piano player, and all the rest of the guys were Dave Holland's band. And I said to Dave Holland, "Why did you pick me?" And he said, "Who else is there?" And you know, what I think, I was thrilled to hear that, but I realized, you know, there was not a giant choice maybe, but anyway, it was totally thrilling. So that was a really formative experience for me, to be there in this atmosphere of music with guys that were super motivated and talented from all over the North American continent and also from Europe. And yeah, getting to meet Dave Holland and play with him and work with him, and Kenny, of course. There was an African drummer named Abraham Adzinya who gave a really great workshop on African drumming, and this is a long time ago, man. I'm trying to remember everybody's name. But yeah, it was a very formative and very transformative time. And I would say that Alan Jones is the number one best outcome of that. And of course, Kenny Wheeler, Dave Holland, and Abercrombie, Liebman and Byrek. Because I studied a little bit with Byrek, and I studied a little with Liebman. And Liebman and I are still personal friends. I have a lot of respect for Dave and also all the other guys that they saw me, and I'm sure they've done this with many people, but we were students at first, and then we became colleagues.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of unseen transformation of a relationship, but it's really beautiful when you think about it, that people are able to just say, okay, now you're with us, and instead of like, yeah, you're still a student kid, and nobody ever says anything, but it's just, it's really nice to have that shift of relationship and friendship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I asked about Banff because I think for your generation, I've done so many of these interviews, and Banff was so important in the mid 80s just because of these guys that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it was like all these, you meeting Alan, and all these friendships, musical relationships formed there and still kept going. Like for many guys still nowadays, many players just play with each other still because of Banff, and it's must have been an interesting one. So that's why I wanted to ask you that. So
yeah. I guess Berkeley in the 80s was a bit like that too, where I don't know what it's like now, but there a group of guys met there and really are now some of the leading musicians, like Kurt Rosenwinkel and Mark Turner and Seamus Blake and Donnie McCaslin. I don't know exactly the history of all those guys in terms of when they were there, but I think that was another place where there were some real magical meetings that led to lifelong collaborations.
Yeah, definitely. You moved to New York like in '87, right?
Yes.
How was that like for you? I mean, if I think about New York in '87, just the amount of horn players, of saxophone players, I mean, the elders were alive, Michael Brecker and Bob Mintzer and all these guys were on the peak. Bob Berg was there. Like, I mean, new guys were coming. How was it like for you when you came to the scene and getting gigs and like those first?
Well, it was kind of terrifying in a certain way. Yeah, when I look back, Samo, I realize how thoughtless I was in that time of my life and how, let's say, unreflective I was. I was totally driven. And so at that time, New York was, to make a living as a musician in New York, there were not so many paths. There was the Broadway path, and I was not interested in that because I like reading music and I play the flute a little bit, but I'm not a doubler and a player, and I just couldn't imagine playing the same thing 8 times a week for a year, Then basically what was called the club date scene, commercial music gigs, that's where everybody made their money. And I played with the bass player from Stanley Turrentine's band, the drummer from one of the guys who played in the Brecker Brothers, and just you would meet all kinds of people. The guitar player who was on Sting's band, or one of the singers in Sting's band, and so I did that to make a living, and then I had a band and was pursuing recording and getting things going, and I played in Bob Mintzer's big band and played in a lot of big bands. I started subbing with Maria Schneider's big band.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was a little bit later. I started subbing in her band in the late 90s and did a month-long tour in Europe. I was in the chair of man, as soon as I have to start thinking of names, I forget them.
You're in Concert in the Garden, right? On 2 tunes, I think, or
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
exactly. I have that album. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
but I was subbing for Rich Perry on the tour.
Okay.
And I subbed often for Rick Margitza also. But yeah, how was it? It was very competitive and very scary. And at certain points, I wasn't really emotionally prepared for the challenges, going to jam sessions. And at one point, I tried something where I would go to a jam session with just my soprano saxophone because the soprano, the tenor's got a size and a largeness to it that you can really physically get behind, and it's a lot easier to play, let's say, fast bebop or something like that. And the soprano for me was, and still always is, the biggest challenge. And so I would really challenge myself by going to a session and playing everything just on the soprano, which was a great challenge to have. And so I was playing in Boston, and I was going around with various people, and I'm from Pennsylvania, which is about 4 hours away from where I was living. And so I played there a lot and played some in Chicago with guys that I went to school with. But yeah, it was not easy because I had to say yes to everything. And I played, one day I would play with Bob Mitzer's band, and the next day I would play with a piano player whose voicing for E half diminished was octaves E and octaves B flat. It's like,
That's a cool sound, man. No, I'm
oh
kidding.
yeah,
This,
yeah, she was nice, but um, so it was but it was great because I met so many people, and I had so many wonderful and yeah, unforgettable experiences. I had a few forgettable experiences too, of course, but
yeah. Did you immediately started to lead bands like in the late 80s already, or like when did you start doing that?
Yeah. There was some guys, two brothers, Pete Abbott and Mike Abbott. They played on my first record. Pete plays drums. He, I think, lives in Nashville now. And Mike, the guitar player, lives in Boulder, Colorado. And we had a band with a bass player named Chuck Bergeron, who's now, I think,
Yeah.
teaching at the University of Miami. And so we were playing gigs in town, and it would be like the door, or you'd pay to play and then you'd get the door. And that's the band that I was going to Boston with. And we did a recording. It was never professionally recorded at the level where I could release it, but it's fun to listen to now. It was kind of like a fusion band in a way.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send you a tune.
Please, I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like listening to the music. This guy, Andy Ezra, the piano player I mentioned before, he played piano and keyboards. And so it was because University of Miami in the 80s was a bit of a fusion and Latin pop place. Whit Seidner, who was the head of the jazz department then, was very cleverly focusing the big band, the top big band, on the talents and the strong points of the players. So at that point in the mid 80s, the bass player, keyboard player, and drummer, the bass player and drummer were they were Cuban. I guess they were first generation Cubans, but they ended up being the rhythm section for Gloria Estefan and what's the name of that band? It was a pop band in the 80s that had really big hits. And so we were playing sort of Latin jazz. And actually, when we played with Mincer, we did his Latin jazz record. And he loved the band for that reason. So yeah, I sort of had this fusion and ECM background and much less straight ahead acoustic jazz. And that was a great way to start, actually.
Yeah.
And, I've realized over the years, having regrets is useless because, first of all, you can't change the past. And second of all, the past is what brought you to where you are in the present. And so either you're satisfied with who you are and you become a happy guy, or you're not, and you're not a happy guy. And so I decided, well, I'm going to be a happy guy and be satisfied with who I am and not have regrets about what I did in the past. So,
Yeah.
like, do you know who David Dorushka is?
Yeah, the guitarist. Yeah, sure. We
Yeah.
did the project together a while ago. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was just teaching last week in Poland with David and Ferenc Nemeth on drums, Tomasz Baroš on bass, and Piotr Vilejal on piano. And David did this great masterclass where he taught everybody the song Fee Fi Fo Fum by singing the melody and singing the bass line. And I realized, wow, I never learned a song that way in my life. And when I was a kid, like I said, I there was a lot I didn't think about and I didn't know about, and I was just reading shit out of the real book and memorizing it like that. And then David comes by and shows this amazing method, and here I am, 62-year-old going, "Oh, I should do that." So, it's never too late to learn great stuff, right?
Yeah. No, but it's just like that's how many of us learned by real books and stuff, or singing. Yeah, but I mean, there are so many methods.
There are.
That's why you are who you are nowadays. When I listen, it's like you said. So it's
and so when I play with these guys, like last week, I mean, the guys are David and Ferenc and Tomasz and Piotr. We played every night, and then we played a concert where we prepared the music. And in every moment, I was just so aware of the gift of being able to play music with people who can create on that level. And at the same time, I'm able to see and I don't like to use the word weakness. I think the word strength is great, but I like to say the points where I haven't yet really developed to the same level. And so those guys, their focus on timing and their ability to carry through no matter what's happening. If we're playing in 5/4, we're playing in 4/4, we're playing swing, we're playing straight eighth notes, wherever the flow of the music is going, the accuracy and the awareness in every single moment is 100%. And I realize, wow, sometimes I space out for a second and then I go, oh, what's going on? Or, I stop playing my solo and then I space for just a tiny fraction of a moment. And then I come back and I go, oh, wow, I missed something, and so being open to continually dedicating myself to becoming better is a joyful process. And with those guys last week, it was great to make music and also great to say, wow, now I know what to practice next week.
Yeah. It's nice to hear this from you. Like, when I speak to someone like Schofield or Frizzell, and like I've seen Schofield like a month ago. He was with Dave Holland, and I've known him for 30 years almost. And we chatted after the concert, and he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man, John, that was a killing concert." He's like, "Yeah, but should I have to practice?" I was like, I mean, "Come on." And then, of course, I was so motivated. Like the next day, I was shedding. I brought my daughter to the kindergarten and just like 6 hours. I was like, when guys like that tell you that, you're like, man, okay.
Well, I think that's one of the features that I've seen in almost every really, really masterful musician is humility, and a high degree of self-awareness. Recognition that where you are is where you are, but there's always more, and there's always some place to go that is worth the effort.
Yeah, definitely.
And none of those guys ever. I mean, I'm using that word very, very vaguely, but Dave Holland, for example, or Dave Liebman, or Richie Barrick, or those three men that I know personally, never, ever, ever stopped.
Mhm.
And Liebman was unbelievably motivated his entire adult life to learn new things. And I did the master class with him right after Banff. It was in '88. He started this series of week-long saxophone master
Oh
classes.
yeah.
And that's when he basically said, I've just discovered rhythm. And, you know, but you know, for him, rhythm was deeply internalized, but he got his tenor and he played the most weird rhythmic thing. And then on one, it was bam right there.
Mm.
And that's when he started getting into mixed meter and exploring multiple groupings, not just 4 and 3
Yeah.
and 6 over the beat. And because he was really focused on harmony for a long time, and he and Richie went very far
Oh
in
yeah.
a harmonic and an intervallic world. But that's when he said, all right, he basically said to himself, it's now time for me to get rhythm going. Have you ever heard him play drums?
Dave? No. No.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I mean, he's now um, getting up close to 80 years
80,
old,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
he had a stroke, I think, a year ago or something. But he sounded like Elvin with no chops, and you know, really like super loose.
Yeah,
But
I can. Well, he played with Alvin, obviously. So
yeah, I mean, I
amazing.
think like Nussbaum has this amazing feel and this gigantic beat. Of course, Nussbaum has incredible, impeccable control and everything, but um, Liebman, Brecker, and Lovano, and also Joe Farrell were all drummers.
Yeah.
And Brecker told me that he and Joe Farrell used to play duos, and they would one guy would play tenor, the other guy would play drums, and then they would switch, and
The lofts. Yeah.
that's how they would spend their days, you know.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. Yeah. It's would
It's
be cool when I'm speaking. Sometimes talk to those guys, who were playing already in the '70s and the loft scene, and
yeah.
has to be a fly sometimes on those sessions, like to
Well,
hear what was going on, because there's no
yeah.
recordings of the loft
No,
setting.
no, that's not true. Liebman told me that he recorded hundreds of hours of those
Really?
sessions. Yeah. I don't know
Wow.
what he's done with it. I'm going to New York in a couple of weeks, and I'm gonna hopefully get together with him, and maybe I'll ask him about that.
Oh
But
man.
he said he did record a lot of that,
Oh,
and
imagine the music, man. It's like, and all the players that were on those sessions, it's just like
yeah,
relaxed and, like,
yeah, you know, he said it was Grossman, Dave Holland, Chick, Abercrombie, DeJohnette, and they would just play for hours. And he said the ballads were basically the same, just a little bit slower than the burnout.
oh
Um,
man. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that was the scene back
That was a
then.
scene. Yeah. Andy, if we return just to you, I wanted to ask you, how did Acid Rain happen? And you becoming a band leader and releasing the album and having like I don't know, a 9-year-old Joey Calderazzo on that album. I'm kidding, but he was really young. So what's the story behind that album?
Well, uh, that was recorded when I was studying with Liebman. I was
Mm.
driving out from where I lived in Long Island, New York. He lived in Delaware Water Gap, and so I was driving there. I don't remember how often, but I would go there and study with him. And that was after I had been at Banff and after I'd been at his workshop, and so I was really, really influenced by him. And so I just decided to dedicate a bunch of money and make a recording. And so I worked with him on every one of the compositions.
Okay.
He produced the record. In other words, he
Yeah.
was there. He recommended the studio. He recommended the engineer, Jim Anderson. He recommended the guy to master the recording. And he also connected me with the Owl Records label in Paris.
Okay.
So he was instrumental in helping me with that record. And I mentioned earlier that I was playing with Mike and Pete Abbott and Peter Herbert, and so I those were the core guys in the band. And then I was really attracted to Joey's playing at that time. He had been in Mike Brecker's band for a little while, So he came and did one rehearsal, and then we did the session, and then I did something really stupid. I met some people that said, "Yeah, we can get you a really great recording deal." And so the guy from Owl Records, Jean-Jacques Poussiot, had offered me a recording deal, and then these other people said, "We can get you a better deal." And then I said to Jean-Jacques Poussiot, "Can you wait a little bit?" And he said, "Well," and he wasn't really pleased. And so then these other people came up with nothing, of course. And I was freaked out. And Liebman said, "Just call Jean-Jacques and apologize. Tell him you made a bad choice, and he'll remember you for being the guy who made a mistake." And it was true. And I had this hour-long conversation with Poussiot, and he said, "Okay, let's still do it. I'm okay." And then he put it out on Owl Records, and he at that time was working, I think, with one of the major labels in the States, but it didn't quite work out. It was supposed to be released in the US and never was. So it was, I think, just a 1,000 CD release, and so now it's a collector's item, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 I wanted to ask you about Noman's Notebook, which we mentioned earlier, and
Yeah.
I listened to the album today. I have a CD actually, so your tunes, Loyal Sock, and that the second one, Kasbah.
Asba Tadla.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, man.
Oh, thank
How did that record come about? And I mean, obviously you've known Dave from Banff, but still having him in your band, I mean, on the album, and especially the Towner connection, because Ralph didn't do many sideman work after 1990, let's say. So, like, what's the story behind that record?
Well, I met Ralph. I had fallen in love with his music when I was in college. The records with Garbarek and Jan Christensen and Eberhard Eber, Solstice and that stuff, and Oregon also. And I actually met him in an elevator in Montreal. We were both at the Montreal Jazz Festival in, I don't know, 89 or something. No, I'm getting mixed up on the dates now. Back then sometime. Anyway, I said, basically, totally nervous, "Man, I'm a giant fan of your music, and I'd love to do a recording with you." And he said, "Yeah, sure, man, let's do it." And then we had a really nice long phone conversation, and he's such a funny guy, and we were just laughing and everything, and he said, "Yeah, let's do the record. Let's do the record. We can do half your music and half my music." And he said, "Who were you thinking about for bass?" And I said, "Well, who would you like to play with?" And he said, "Oh man, who's the bass player in Keith Jarrett's trio?"
Gary Peacock.
Yes, because he had done a bunch of duo.
Yeah, they played together. Yeah.
And so he suggested Gary Peacock, and I said, "Oh, I was thinking of Dave Holland because I just had been working with him at the workshop." And he goes, "I haven't played with Dave in 25 years. Yeah, let's do it." And so then I was in Germany on a tour, and Sheila, my late wife, was with me, and we went to the office of Intuition Music and Media. I had somehow managed to get a meeting with the A&R guy there, and stupidly, I was totally hungover. And so I went in there with Sheila, and we were talking to this guy, and we pitched the record. So Dave Holland, Ralph Towner, Alan Jones, and Jamie Haddad ended up playing percussion, and Noah Bless played trombone. And I was kind of out of it, and Sheila just was sitting next to me and said to this guy, "Andy's one of the best saxophone players around. You really should just say yes to this project." And the guy goes, "Okay, let's do it." And, so I've done 2 records where the record company actually paid significant money to write everything. And so that's how it came about. Sheila was the producer on both of those records, and really was the person who said the key thing at the key moment to the key person to get happening. And so Ralph came over from Italy and spent a week in Brooklyn, and we rehearsed a little bit with some friends of mine. And then Dave came down from Woodstock or wherever he was living then. And we had one long rehearsal, and then we spent 2 days in the studio in Brooklyn. And yeah, it was a total dream. It was amazing. And Ralph came over to my place for dinner, and so we started a nice friendship that lasts until this day. I would love to play to record another record with Ralph. And you know, I had asked him a couple of times, and he said that he didn't want to overextend himself because he was playing with Oregon. He has had this duo with a trumpet player from
with Paolo Frezo,
yeah. I'm glad your memory of names is better than mine this morning. And he also was playing, I think there was a thing he was doing with Kenny Wheeler and Norma Winstone and John Taylor as a mute. And so he said, it's not the right time. And now, you know, he fell and injured himself a couple of months ago.
Oh, really? I didn't know. Oh, shit.
He was going to play in Porgy and Bess, and then they canceled the concert.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then a Rebo play. Yeah.
And so Christoph Huber at Porgy told me that Ralph had fallen and injured his back. And then I wrote to Ralph, and he said, yeah, it's taken a really long time to recover, and hopefully he'll be back again. So I don't think that dream is going to be realized. But my dream when I was in my late 20s was to record with Ralph and to record with Kenny, because those guys, and they remain
my heroes. Yeah.
Yes, to this day, those two guys are central to my compositional concept, and I use them teaching all the time, talking about modal harmonic composition and melodic development.
Melody,
yeah. And I think the chance to have gotten both of those guys on recordings is, you know, for me, I see that as again another transformational time in my life. And Dave was so supportive. Dave Holland. There was this one. Actually, it was the tune "Songs of Struggle and Love," where I had written out this complex bass line, and in the recording session, he said, "Do you really want me to play that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, okay, let's do this. I'll just record a little bit, just by myself. I'll play your bass line, and then I'll play what I would play." And of course, you know, what he played was way better. And I said, "Thank you. Yes, please do that."
That's good.
Yeah, but he was totally cool about it, you know, and he was really super supportive and totally fun to be with.
What about Kenny?
Kenny,
your hook up with Kenny, and I mean, because you know he's Kenny, like you said. But
well, I don't know if you ever met him, but he was
I didn't have a chance to.
Super shy and very quiet man. And I forget how I contacted him. I guess I just wrote him or called him. He was living in London then, and he agreed to the recording. And we did, I think, one gig before we recorded, and we recorded in Cologne.
Yeah.
And so we were there for 2 days, and he was he's got a career as a studio musician, and so he's great at just reading exactly what's there. And I think by that time he was much better at playing his own music than at playing other people's music. And I've heard from other people that actually his manager towards the end of his life almost gave up on him because Kenny wasn't being so successful. I mean, you know, he was in his 80s. Other people's music, but then somebody said, "Hey, you know, put him on the road or put him on the stage playing his music," and then suddenly, bang, he's, you know, what he is. And so Liebman said to me, "I think you know, Kenny wasn't really at his best on that record. And, you know, Kenny plays beautifully. And there's moments on that record that are just absolutely priceless. Like, I don't know if you remember the tune 3 Mile Island.
I have to re-listen. Yeah.
His playing on that is just fantastic. And his sound,
Yeah.
whenever he plays, is wonderful. So he was really super, super nice to be with, but he's not wasn't a social person. He's just kind of oh, okay, let's play another one. And, you know, just really gentle and sweet man.
Yeah. No, beautiful.
Yeah.
Just to have, you know, in your discography, those 2 records already, among others, that's such a nice thing. Just
I mean,
listen to
those were the with Joey Calderazzo and Dave Holland, Ralph Towner, and Kenny Wheeler. Those were let's say, the stars that I reached for and got on my records, and then recognized after that my colleagues were super, super talented, and it made sense to be able to focus on music with those guys. And so I've just it's a gift of my life to have played with so many amazing musicians, well-known superstars and almost unknown guys.
Yeah.
You probably noticed that I play a lot in Eastern Europe now, and mostly actually in Poland. I guess Western Europe may have forgotten who I am now. I don't know if they ever knew. I don't know. But I used to play in the Netherlands and Belgium and France and Germany pretty often, and now I don't. But I play with some amazing guys in Poland, and Piotr Vilejol, Piotr Wojtaszek, trumpet player. You probably know Piotr, right? Yeah. So
it's like the scene there, it's amazing. I mean, Poland obviously it has the last 50, 60 years, it had an amazing scene.
Yeah.
The musicians at least, and many clubs, and
and there's a lot of support. Like a lot of the cities have jazz festivals and active clubs. And there's a scene of extremely strong musicians who are just super talented and super motivated, and it's really nice there. So
beautiful,
yeah.
Which kind of leads me, not to take too much of your time, but to the last question. Like, what are your upcoming, you know, we mentioned the 3 hopefully soon to be released albums, but what about gig-wise? What's on the schedule for the upcoming months?
Well, I have a little bit of time off now, and my next gig is a solo concert at a museum in Vienna.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm playing in Poland with a singer named Dorota Mickiewicz. Kuba Stankiewicz is a piano player. We're playing at the Victor Young Jazz Festival, and so we're playing a kind of standards program. We've played that music a few times before with that band. Then I'm going to be on the road for a week in mid-October with one of the top trumpet players in Poland named Jerzy Małek. And he has Doug Weiss on bass, Danny Grissett on piano, and Alan Jones on drums. I talked him into Alan Jones, and he won't regret it. So we're going to play a week in Poland and do a recording. And then not so much going on in November. I play with some people a little bit in Vienna, some local gigs here, and then I'm going to tour end of January, beginning of February with my quartet. That's going to be with the German piano player Tino Dorado. He's been in my band since 2005. Alan and the Czech bassist Tomáš Baroš. And Piotr Vilejol was invited by the conductor of the symphony in Olsztyn in northern Poland to write a group of pieces for orchestra and piano. And so that was supposed to happen at the end of January, but I think he's going to move it for a month later. But we're going to continue to tour with Piotr. He's really, really excited about this quartet, and the band is really, I have to say, it's one of the most amazing musical experiences I've had to play with this band, because of course the musicianship is outstanding, the music is outstanding, but the interplay and the sensitivity and the creative and spontaneous way that we interact is just priceless. And so we're going to keep going with that band, I'm pretty sure. And then I play with a really great young trumpet player from Slovakia, but living in outside of Brno in Czech Republic, named Lukáš Oravec. And he has a small big band. It's 10 horns and rhythm section. We're going to do a recording in early January. This will be our third big band record, actually.
To check it out.
Yeah, and actually, there's a really wonderful writer from Russia. He's from Sochi, but he lives outside of Frankfurt. His name is Pavel Klimashevsky, and he has written some fantastic arrangements for this band. We did a record with Łukasz. It was Danny Grissett, Tomasz Baroš, Marian Shevchich on drums, and the Moravian Philharmonic Orchestra.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's
okay.
wonderful. There's some great videos on YouTube, but it's Lucas's compositions arranged by Pavel. So it's string orchestra and quintet, and we recorded it during the pandemic. So the string players have their masks on, and it's kind of weird, but the music is really, really nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll be doing another recording with that band. I'll write some music for him. I wrote a piece 10 years ago for 9 saxophones, drums, and me. It's like a 3-part saxophone symphony that's 15 minutes long. And I've only ever played it once, and I'm thinking I want to record that, and then maybe I could add that to the recording of the Muir Woods Suite and release that as a record.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so just getting excited. And also Piotr Vilejal and I want to do a duo recording, but we've been talking about it for a couple of years now. And he wants to record the Shostakovich preludes. And I don't know, it's the same thing that Keith Jarrett recorded.
Yeah.
And he wants to do his version of it, but with improvisation. Yeah, so he's a lifelong partner. Alan and I are going to do something. I think I mentioned Piotr Wojtaszek before, the Polish trumpet player. I formed a band with Piotr and the late Wolfgang Reisinger.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I called it the Freedom Quartet. And with Peter Herbert on bass. And we had one gig in Porgy 2 years ago. It was 3 years ago, I guess. It was still during the pandemic. So we did a live, a live stream, not a concert actually. And Piotr in the last minute couldn't come because of COVID regulations. So I just recorded played the gig with Peter Herbert and Wolfgang Reisinger.
Yeah. Wow.
And then Wolfgang passed away 2 years ago. And so a year ago, I did a concert and a little tour with Piotr Wojtaszek, Alan Jones, and a really great young bass player from Portland named Garrett Baxter. And so I want to do some more free direction playing with those guys again. So that's on the agenda also, because that's an angle I really, really love. Just
more open playing.
Yeah, a melody, a basic structure, and different ways of approaching it. But that's Piotr is world-class player at that, and Alan actually is. I think he's really one of the best drummers in the world, and just not well known enough. But he can play free music fantastically, and he's basically the drummer in my imagination. So whenever I write music, it's all about Alan somehow anyway. So
where is Alan living?
He lives in Portland, Oregon.
Ah, he's there. Okay.
Yeah, he's from Portland. He lived in Paris. He lived in Vienna.
Yeah.
He lived in Germany. And because of some family stuff, he decided to move back. He wanted to bring his son back to grow up in the States because they had some challenges with school and stuff. And so he started a school called the Alan Jones Academy of Music, which is AJAM. And he's wildly successful at his own jazz academy, and he's got super motivated young students. And so it's a total do-it-yourself thing, but he's been doing it for 15 years.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, AJAM, check it out. But yeah, Alan is a guy that deserves much, much wider recognition. You know, that downbeat category, artists deserving wider recognition.
I will not even comment that, man. It's like
Yeah.
Sonny Rollins was probably third this year or something. I'm just kidding. Sometimes you see names like, players who are, Cal Galper, and it's sixth on the artist deserving wider or something. What, are you kidding me, people? Come on.
Well,
But anyway, yeah.
jazz as a commercial, we have to separate the business of music from the art of music.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have a lot to do with each other, and sometimes they have nothing to do with each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, we just have to pursue. I mean, the way I'm seeing it, I just follow my muse and connect with people and try to take inspired actions. And also, this is something that I've learned in the last 6 or 7 years, really to totally let go of any resentment, to totally let go of any bitterness, to totally let go of any feeling of, hey man, why aren't I,
Yeah.
And number one, I feel way better. And number two, I feel better when I play, and everything is better when I am grateful for what I have. And every day, literally every day I wake up and say, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And what more could I ask for, And yeah.
No,
And
it's a good philosophy. Yeah. Yeah. Way
wonderful
better.
to talk to you, Samo. And we share, even though we've never even played together, but we share a lot of experiences and a lot of so when are we going to play together?
Exactly, man. You're 2 hours away, so come.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. But Andy, thanks again, man, for sharing some of these thoughts. I'll let you know when this is out. I'll send you a link and everything. So.
Please. Yes. Thank you. It was a great pleasure to talk to you, Samo.
You too. Stay in touch.
Okay. See you, man.
Bye.
Ciao.
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.